We were a little late today. We're a little late getting started. We're about 5 minutes past the mark. We did have some problems with the internet, so that's kind of where the delay was. I almost forgot one thing. Sorry about that. I had to shut the door behind me. The light in there causes a bit of a problem in that anytime there is a major source of light in front of any camera, any of this what we call a sensor, you end up with a bit of a problem because it swamps the sensor and it darkens everything in front of it. So shutting the door, because there's a light there that actually shines into the sensor, even though it's far away, it starts to darken everything, and that's what gives us our color tint. So anyways, let's get started for today. We're 5 minutes off the mark. Basically at 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock now, or 11 o'clock. We're heading over to you now, and from 11 till 12, and then from 11 to 12, we're going to be at you now, and then from you now, then no, at midnight, then we'll be over at Twitcasting. And this is kind of going to be an intermediate day here. We're not going to be doing anything. No, we're going to get into some of the meat of the stuff, but we're not going to get too far because we've only got 2 days. Basically, we've got tonight and tomorrow night, and then that's it. Then the testing phase, the sort of the preliminary experimental phase, is going to be over. We do have a format now. Now that the format is set, we will begin on August 11th. August 11th is when the new TalkLive is going to come back. Basically, we're going on hiatus from the 16th of July all the way until basically Monday, August 11th. That's when we're coming back. So yeah, from July 16th to August 11th, we're going to be on hiatus. We're taking a little bit of a break. There's some stuff I have to work on. There's also a lot of research that has to be done. And I'm also going to be out on expeditions, doing various different expeditions during that time too. So I'm not going to be in the office. I'm not going to have the opportunity to be in my library, my labs, to do the work needed to sort of to keep this up. So we are going to come back fresh August 11th. We'll have a lot more for you, a lot more content coming for you. And we're going to have TalkLive. TalkLive is now going to be the title. It's not going to be at the Research Desk anymore. It's going to be TalkLive. And the way it's going to work is that TalkLive is going to be part of InstaVlogs. InstaVlogs are the research notes. This is sort of the next step. This is going to be live essays. These are going to be live essays based on the research notes. So these are going to be it's going to be InstaVlogs TalkLive, and then you're going to have so this is going to be InstaVlog. This is going to be InstaVlogs TalkLive. This is going to be InstaVlog Notes. And at some point in time, because now we're into notes, that means probably by maybe September, October, we'll have enough done to get into the first draft, or the rough draft, or the first cut for the doc zone. Setting up a doc zone as part of the offerings here. That means we'll be moving into documentaries, and documentaries are kind of they're the presentation, they're the video presentations of papers. TalkLive are like your colloquium, they're like lectures. It can be interactive. If you want to ask questions, I don't have a problem with that. In other words, this is going to actually not going to be a talk show format. In other words, like most talk shows, most stuff you see on TV rarely ever show you what you would get at university. In other words, you're not sitting in front of a university lecture. You're not sitting in front of a colloquium or colloquia where you have a researcher presenting the research that he's done. That doesn't occur. You don't really see that on TV too much. Maybe you might see this on PBS. You see this occasionally on PBS, but again, not that often, and not as in depth as we're going to go into here. Basically, PBS takes you into they take you into your maybe your first or second year of university, but they have very called general knowledge and general understanding lectures. They're basically lectures for the public, so on and so forth, and they don't really expect you to go much further than that. CyborgAlphaTV-Network is going to take you much further. It's going to start you off in the first and second year, and to introduce you to the undergraduate research, and eventually show you. It's basically, and I'm doing this by showing you the work that I'm doing. Bring out my research notes, bringing out my organizations of the notes. And on Talk Now, on Talk Live, we're bringing you a live. I'm bringing you a live essay, and these are based off the research notes that I started with. These are called the ad hoc notes. Your first notes when you first start doing sort of this off textbook research, you're not looking at your textbook as your primary source, but you're now trying to look for as much primary. This is where the difficulty comes in. This type of research assumes it takes the position that there is no primary. The primary sometimes can be very misleading, and if you're not sure of the content that you have in the primary, you have to find independent sources to verify what's in the primary to sort of see, to see where the primary source of information is getting its knowledge from, and where its understanding is at. As I said before, there is no talk show host, there is no journalist, there's no researcher who doesn't have a bias. To understand my bias, you have to go into my background, you have to do research on who I am, and see where my possible biases are. But the second thing is you also have to sit and watch what I'm saying. Is the bias off the cuff right there, or am I trying to not be biased, or am I trying to hide my bias? And what I'm saying here, this is, as I said before, these aren't easy talks. These are not something that's simple. We are going into these things in a more detailed manner, and I will explain this in a bit. Because I want to go back to Jeremy H's comment. Apparently, there was more than what I had initially seen to his comment. But as I went back to look over his comment again after I finished the last live broadcast, there was a whole section there that I didn't even see. Google had got basically covered up and just put down more, click for more, and I didn't realize that was there. Didn't see it. So I just went with the first part, and so now I'm going to read the rest of it, and this will sort of set the tone for where we're going from here. This will give you, what this does, gives you an understanding of how other people see what I'm doing, and you'll see that. And again, this person here, this is not blaming the person. This is not an issue where I'm taking fault or attacking the person. This is just simply using this as an example as to what commonly occurs. As I said, research is not easy. Presenting research is not easy either, and for the person listening, it is also not easy. You understand maybe you don't understand 100% of what you're listening to. In many cases, even if you only understand 25%, that's still pretty good. So there, as I was saying, normally, if you got 25% on something, that's less than 50%. That's less than a D. You'd be freaking out. And most people consider anything below a B that's a 70% knowledge. That's 70%. That's 70% understanding. And people, that's your low end for what people consider to be a passing grade. So people are upset about B's, and if they want A's, people want all A's. in their schools and their marks and so on and so forth. They want the higher GPA, the grade point average. And if they get anything slightly lower than that, they're kind of upset. And so a lot of people, when you're only getting 25, 50%, in other words, you're getting well under the 70%. It's frustrating and upsetting to people. But you need to realize that this is the way the research is. That this is what happens, particularly in physics research. That there is a lot that's not understood, and our goal is to start building up an understanding. And we're not building the understanding. We're building an understanding. We're building a partial understanding, an approximation, if you will. And that's as far as we're going. We will never really go beyond an approximation. The degree to which an approximation is complete will vary. It will increase the more you work on something, but nonetheless, it will never get beyond its initial. We will never get beyond the fact that it's going to be simply an approximation and nothing but. I mean, this is what physics tells us, that we can never get. The only thing we can actually get to is the approximation. We can't get to absolute knowledge. We can't get to absolute scientific truth. And this is for us something that's asymptotic. It's not there for us, and so we have to deal with an approximation. This is why atheism comes into this question here, because atheism stuck itself out and said, "I am the truth." Right? Scientific truth is the highest truth you could ever possibly have. Well, not really. Because if scientific truth now, because of what's happening in quantum physics and atomic physics, and this is why we're talking about atheism and the atomic bomb, and this will also include Tesla, and you'll see how this includes Tesla. The outgrowth from the atomic bomb into general relativity, quantum electrodynamics, superstring theory, and so on and so forth, which eventually led into dark matter. Dark matter and energy now, they're estimating it makes up 95% of the universe. In other words, our total sum knowledge that we can ever hope to achieve, right, the best we can ever hope to achieve is 5%. 95% is just so far beyond us. Right now, it's not within our calculations. It's not even within our calculations. The best we can get, our absolute maximum right now, is 5%. So the argument that atheism, because it stood on this whole thing of scientific truth, and as I said, atheism moves back to its initial definition. And as I said, atheism is defined as, well, it's a literal definition. There is a general philosophy known as theism. It's a theism about God. And so when the theism, well, a philosophy came along saying there is no God, it took up the antithesis part of atheism, of theism. So because because the philosophy known as atheism took up the atheistic part, it literally becomes atheism. In other words, atheism isn't a narrowly defined word. It's not. It's got a very, atheism already from its beginning has a very broad scope, and it was basically redefined in the 1800s to be scientific truth. It was moved out of the philosophy range, and from about basically from 1800 all the way into well, let's say late 1800s, 1850 to about just about 2000, atheism kind of ranked up there. I would say even, I'm going to give it a good general thing. Let's say 2010, because there's a lot of new developments happened after 2010. So let's say 1850 to about 2010, atheism reigned supreme. It was unchallenged and could not be really challenged as scientific truth. A lot of chemistry is based on this. A lot of biology is based on this. Evolutionary biologists are certainly basing their arguments on this. But when you go beyond and you look at the actual physics of what's happening, and they said physics is the underlying science of everything. So if you really want to understand the basis, you want to understand the fundamentals, you want to go back to the absolute the limit to where you know things. Well, that's in physics. And when physics says there is no scientific truth, all of a sudden the atheistic argument collapses, and we're at the situation now where atheism as defined as when it was atheism as defined as a science can no longer be defined as a science, but has to now be pulled back to a philosophy, to its initial position as an atheism. And again, these are complex terms because the proper term for atheism is not atheism itself. You really should be calling an atheist, because atheism is a general name for the philosophy. It's a generalized name for the philosophy, and to some degree it includes agnosticism. So basically, atheism and agnosticism really do have an overlapping area, because many of your agnostics initially started off as atheists, changed their minds, couldn't square up and say, okay, well, I'm not convinced that there isn't a God, but at the same time, I'm not convinced that there is a God. In other words, they sit in an in-between position where they're not sure whether there is a God or not a God. And this is what Jeremy was talking about, the unconvinced atheist. And the term for that is agnosticism. And again, we're talking about philosophical terms. And I'll read the rest of the letter, because you'll start understanding his point and where he's coming from, where his mind is coming from. He says, "You promised to tell us about things you found that support theism." And I didn't say I was going to support theism. I'm not taking this from a religious point of view. Theism is a philosophy. It's in terms of its academic understanding, it should be understood as a philosophy. And that's all it is. It's nothing more than that. So I wasn't supporting theism. What I was doing was looking at from perspective of physics. This was and it still is an exercise. It still is research in quantum physics. This is part of quantum physics here. Because quantum physics does not. Most sciences, when you get to what we call the end of the science, there's a hard line. And that's what we call finite science, or a deterministic science. That means you can determine a path. There's a rigid. The edges are very well marked, and it's very well defined. In quantum mechanics, as you move beyond quantum mechanics into superstring theory, you realize in quantum mechanics there isn't a defined edge. What you have is we call a dashed edge or a dotted edge. That means the edge is porous. It's very fluid and undefined. And the question that I'm asking here is that because we're seeing what we're seeing, particularly with M-fold theory, talking about parallel universes here, the quandary here, the question here is, can you then extend the whole concept of M theory into an idea or an understanding of a spiritual universe, using the spiritual universe to match up with what we understand in M theory to be parallel universes? Is a spiritual universe a parallel universe? That's the question. The question is a parallel universe, and could a parallel universe be a spiritual universe? That's the question here. And this arises not out of theism, not out of religion. This is not a religion. This arises out of physics. This is a question of physics. And I approach everything, including my own understanding of theism, right, from the perspective of physics. And a lot of people in my church, right, I do go to a church. I do go to church a lot. And a lot of people disagree with my perspective on how I view the church. And I understand that. I have no problem that they disagree with it, because my understanding of the theism that I belong to, that I subscribe to, matches up very well with quantum physics. It matches up very closely with quantum physics. It's starting to match up very closely with M theory, with the superstring theory. And so I don't really have a problem with it. And the thing is, one of the things that you find in both quantum physics and quantum sort of quantum physics and superstring theory is that you don't have simply one answer that could be that is right, but you can have multiple answers that are right depending on the conditions that the answer exists in. And in other words, it's not a very simple thing. And I think you can have two answers simultaneously. You can have both a right and a wrong at the same time, and you can have a right and a right at the same time. And the reason it is in many cases right beyond us. But the thing is, the comparison is there under the whole question of simultaneity, and this is the whole question about the if you go into quantum computing and it's looking at electron affinity, and you're doing experiments on electron affinity for quantum computing, the whole issue of simultaneity pops up, and it's within the experiments that this pops up. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is something that pops up within the experiment. This is an experimental result, and this is what's thrown a monkey wrench into a lot of the theoretics that's going on in physics. Because if you have a lot of this uncertainty in there, including the question with simultaneity, then what happens is all theory collapses into an approximation and never fully defines anything. In other words, you can never have a theory, and the theory is fundamentally that's what your equation is. The equation is the model of the theory. That's how you produce your models, is through the equation. And if your equation only gives you the approximation, never gives you the absolute result, then that's as far as you can go. What you can do is you can only improve on the model, but you can never complete the model. And this is something that is appearing to be more and more true in physics. And what we're going to do is, by talking about atheism and the atomic bomb, we're going to show this pattern repeats itself over and over and over again within the history of science. If you look at things from a scientific point of view, you're going to see that we get to a certain point of knowledge. That certain point of knowledge we think is the greatest, is the latest, the greatest, that we think we've solved the problem. We go a little bit further, and everything that we thought was wrong, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to rewrite our equations. We have to rethink our model, because before we thought we were at the end, we realized we're not at the end. That we have another mountain to climb, if you will. And this is how we're going to do this. And this is what I mean. But his understanding of it, and I've been talking about this, about the perspective of research, about the perspective of quantum mechanics, on almost every broadcast, and yet he missed this. He says, I'm talking about theism. I'm not talking about theism in terms of being a religion. And he's talking about, talks about the things you found to support theism. He's using the term theism in much the same way as you would talk about religion. And religion, and I said, religion and theism are two different things. Religion is founded on and is supported by theism. Theism is something completely separate than religion is. And what happens is religion takes from and sort of rests on top of theism. And in many cases, this is where you get your adjustments from. We call it the changes in theism. Often manifests itself in religion, and as it's practiced, maybe you have later on down the road theologians who are influenced by, and the theologians are your theists. They're your sort of if you will, God scientists or God philosophers. And as these influences hit the philosophers, a lot of the religious aspects that were there initially, that was in the background of the philosopher, creeps into the theism. And I think you could show this historically, that theism has always had a personal point to it. In other words, the personal psychology of the philosophers always within the theism. And I said theism right now I'm talking about different than religion. And I said this, but he didn't understand. He missed this. I'm very interested in hearing about that. My point about semantics is small and boring in comparison, so you do not. Let's not dwell on that. But the thing is that in philosophy, when you talk about philosophy, you're going back to the philosophical point. And again, what happens? Science starts in philosophy, and that as you begin to get your evidence, the philosophy becomes a science because it's now supported by evidence. That becomes a theory, and you don't move to scientific truth anymore because there is no scientific truth. You just simply have your theory expands, it grows as your model and understanding grows, and that's about it. That's as far as you can go. You can't go any further because of the results in physics. And the thing is that the semantics, right? The semantics in philosophy is extremely important. It is not a minor thing. It's not something small and boring. Well, some people may. It's not small, but for many people it is certainly boring because you're talking about details that more often that will literally fly over a person's head. It is even people talking about semantics. You know, as much as I've done semantics now for more than 25 years, and I still haven't fully gotten the hang of it yet. There's always more to understand. You're always fumbling around with things. I mean, look at how we talk about atheism. And the thing is, there are two forms of atheism. There's the theoretical atheism, where you're talking about the theistic aspect of it, where it's supposed to be in the academics. But then you have what we call the common use or the common knowledge atheism. The common knowledge atheism, the term atheism, as it's commonly used, it's used in many ways like a religion, and it's not a religion. Well, initially, what happens? This is the problem here. Atheism is and isn't a religion. It really depends on how you're looking at atheism. If you're looking at atheism as from the perspective of the colloquial and as a perspective of the common word, it's a religion. It's what people practice. It's what people believe. If you're looking at atheism purely from the philosophical term, then atheism is simply another form of theism. And it's a literally defined form of theism. Theism and atheism are two the same words. The only thing is the way the Greeks do things sometimes. Instead of having anti-theism, right, you have atheism. So the rest of the anti part, everything, the NT's part, the NTIS part, because it's NTs. All right, there's supposed to be an S at the end, but more often than not, the S is dropped, so it becomes anti. The NTI is more often than dropped. So take away the NTI from anti-theism, and you have atheism. And then this is what happens is this is a literal assignment. In terms of your nomenclature, in terms of your terminology, this is a literal definition of atheism. So atheism, instead of giving it a name or a brand like let's say Platonic or Platoism or Nestorianism, is atheism takes on the entire range of theism, rather than taking on a specific aspect of it. So theism is not narrowly defined. It's a very broadly defined term, and this is the part of the problem. It's so broadly defined, and there is no, in many cases, there is no change in term depending on its uses. Atheism across the board is atheism. No matter how you use it, even though its definition is so broad, you use it in one sense here, meaning something more specific. Let's say about the common use of religion. Take atheism, use it in that very specific context, and there's no change from the major overall the umbrella term and the specific term. There's no difference between the two. And so this is where semantics comes in and says, okay, we need to understand what we're talking about here. We need to understand our perspective, to get our perspective right on this. And these things. This is part of research. This is part of what happens in research, and it's one of the reasons why research in many cases, lectures are so for most people, they find it boring. Is, well, I don't want to go through all these different things. That's what he's saying here. But the thing is, you have to go through this and sort of figure it out. And the thing is, I think you've defined atheism too narrowly. And that's what I'm saying. You can't define atheism too narrowly. The problem with atheism is it's so broadly defined, it applies to both the specific and the general at the exact same time. And he was talking about this whole thing about the unconvinced atheism. Well, there is no unconvinced atheism because unconvinced atheism is an oxymoron. These are two terms that are completely that cancel each other. They're opposed to each other. They're a contradiction. You can't have an unconvinced atheism or an unconvinced atheist. When you have an unconvinced atheist, an atheist that has sort of, begun wondering if the position of atheism is the absolute position, and started saying, well, is there a God? And just because you say there is a God or start thinking there is a God, doesn't mean you prescribe to a particular religion. It just, at this point in time, you're saying, is there a God? It's the question. It's the initial primary question, is there a God? That's as far as that statement has gone. And it's saying, if there is a God, not, leaving that question open, not answering it, and at the same time still having your feelings that you're not sure if there is a God, right? Is there is not a God? Don't know. Leaving that as a question mark, right? If that's your position when you're in that question mark period, you're in that position, and there are people that are talking who say, yeah, I'm in that position. You're not an unconvinced atheist. The proper term for that is agnostic. That's an agnostic. And again, agnostic is a massive umbrella term, but it is more specific than atheism is. And agnostic, again, comes from the Greek, and this is where, if you really are going to get into all this stuff, get into some of this stuff in a good detail, and I'm sorry, this is not going to be simple. You do have to get into your Greek, because gnosis is where knowledge comes from. So gnosis is your knowledge. Agnostis, is the lack of knowledge. It's the unknowledge. And it's not that you're stupid, it's just the knowledge isn't there. So when you don't have a knowledge of God, right, and this is sort of, we're taking this position here, when you're not certain of God, or if there is or isn't a God, that's a lack of knowledge. That's not that it means you're stupid. You simply don't have the knowledge isn't there. Not seeing or not understanding that knowledge, or in other words, the knowledge isn't there, is not the same thing as seeing the knowledge and just simply ignoring it. That's ignorance. Seeing the knowledge and having no capacity to understand, no hope in the future of understanding, does mean stupidity. That's actually definite. There is a definition of stupidity. There is a definition of an idiot, and these are actually defined terms. And we're going to be going into this. And the thing is, because the defined term for idiot and moron and stupidity, all these things come out of atheism. They're not. These are terms that are developed by Freud, and you'll see how they're actually developed by the atheistic society. As atheistic society emerges in the early 1900s, a lot of these terminologies are around there, and they become cemented, and you have the formation of unions to take care of the people, the workers who are viewed as feebly minded. They're so simply minded they cannot take care of themselves. They need people to house them, clothe them, to feed them, to take care of their money. This is what a union was. This is what the unions were put together by the higher ups, the more intellectually based, and the intellectuals were able to go in and sort of take care of these poor slobs, the idiots, the morons, who were workers and couldn't handle things for themselves. And then again, this is how we're going to go into things. We're going to let the history and the scientific evidence define atheism as it's commonly used. I know we're talking about now the commonly used term of atheism. We're going to look. We're going to sort of define this better in the light of history and in physics. And as we do the definition, you'll see that it's going to move back to its standard position, its initial position, where it is a theism. Theism is, again, simply the definition of a God, or the definition of God. Gods. This includes polytheism, right? If there's more than one God, if you believe in devils and angels, but not a God itself overall. If you believe in animal spirits, spirits of nature, is covered by theism, and not knowing about God, the unknowledge of God, that's within. That's the agnostic is within theism. And those who say there is no God. That's also within theism. So theism is the overall umbrella. It's the overall tent. And my argument is, and this is sort of where I'm heading towards with all this, is I'm going towards the view that we can start whittling away at some of the sort of called speculative aspects of the philosophy, and start bringing in quantum physics and superstring theory into the equation. Because right now, theism as it stands is purely philosophical. There is no real scientific evidence for it, and it's primarily based on belief. In other words, it's purely an abstract philosophy. It's something that's conceptual, and there's no basis of reality in it in terms of the underlying philosophy. Religion actually it has a history, it has a reality to it, and we can then use history to compare what actually happened with the practice of this particular religion as compared to what its ideals would be. And in these cracks and these comparisons, we can start shaping, particularly because we can start seeing some of the physics involved. We can start shaping our understanding and bring theism more into a metaphysics, if you will, and if you want to use the term, a meta-quantum physics, a quantum version of metaphysics. Bring this into the play and start making more of a science than it is a philosophy. So this is we're in the philosophy science argument. That's where we're at. That's the sort of the positions between the arguments here. So he goes on to say, I don't know anyone who would call themselves an atheist by your definition. And this is the problem here. And it's not my definition. This is the result of the research. This is a result of quantum physics. This is a result of superstring theory. That the definition that was initially used, that atheists typically define themselves under, is now gone. So now what's next? And that was the question. And that's why I said, is atheism dead? And this is it's in the light of the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb really changed things for people. It brought a visual evidence for quantum physics that didn't exist. So 1945 is kind of your tipping point. It didn't really take hold in the public till about 2010. In 2010, things began to slide. And while you do have a staunch defense of atheism, you have a staunch defense of atheism as a religion, more than you would actually have as a science. In other words, the scientific basis is gone, and because the scientific basis is gone, what you have now left is a religious debate, and that's what you see right now. More often than not, we're hearing an argument between an atheist and a non-atheist. It turns into a religious argument, and it shouldn't be a religious argument, because again, religions are a narrow definition of theism. They're a narrow view of theism because it comes down to how it's practiced, and it really depends on the group. It depends on the individual, and then in other words, you have so many. You need to take religion really down to the individual and how the individual actually practices this. His belief. That's religion, and this is why the argument really goes nowhere. If you're getting down to religious argument and you're talking about positions, because both positions are based on belief, it doesn't matter who's right, because it's both. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter, what you believe. You have to realize what's actually there first, right? And then base your belief on some, on the reality that's there. I mean, some people don't need to do that, but in the argument phase, if you're going to go up and argue against somebody who's another religion, then you do need that. I mean, if you're going to sort of walk off and say, I'm not going to listen to anything, I'm going to believe what I want to believe, then that there's that too. But it's not an argument. It's just sort of saying, I'm going to believe what I believe, and that's it. And that's what I'm saying. Talking about maybe those there who are kind of on the fence about things now, or start, thinking about it. The better term might not be, instead of unconvinced atheism, the proper term is agnostic. So it seems like you're mounting an attack on a position nobody has reason to defend. Well, again, this is a good. I've been talking about quantum physics. I've been talking about the research all this time for about 2 weeks now. I don't know. I don't think he's watched this. I don't think he's watched the entire 2 weeks. I don't think he's gone back and done the background research into who I am, and as to what I've been talking about all this time, on the internet. So it looks like, particularly if you're coming into an initial argument, and you're only taking bits and pieces of it, and more often than not, the bits and pieces that sort of stick in your mind, the ones that you really are opposed to, that sort of shake your understanding of things, and in many cases, when your understanding is shaken, you disagree with it strongly. So that's how I sort of that his sentence there sort of brings that out. It says, and I don't want to watch that. I want to hit the fast forward button, tearing past the tearing down of this irrelevant atheism and get to the good stuff. What have you found that builds up to theism? And I wanted to sort of read this because this sums up the the general view of most, not only those atheists, most religious people. And then this is not typical of atheists. This is typical of all people who have a belief in religion and argue from the religious point of view. They want to get to the direct arguments. They want to get down to the direct proof of what's there. And that's it. I just spent 2 weeks talking about it. Quantum physics and superstring theory removes proof. There is no proof anymore. There is no scientific truth. And this is what causes the problem in the first place. If we didn't have dark matter and dark energy, and if it didn't make up 95% of the universe, we would have certainty. We would have been able to get rid of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. But we haven't been able to get rid of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. The uncertain nature of the universe removes proof. So you can't prove things. This is what caused the problem. I mean, prior to the atomic bomb, you could prove things. You had a theory. This is what makes the difference between a deterministic science and an undeterministic science. A deterministic science is finite. It has a proof. It has laws to it. In an undeterministic science, a probabilistic science has no proof. It's got conditional probability. It's got conditional. It has conditional probabilities. In other words, it's not just to be probabilistic. The probabilities have conditions to them. So it's a conditional probability. This is what's in quantum mechanics. And so the whole concept of proof is gone within physics. And this causes a problem if atheism build itself as a science. No problem. But when science disappears because there's no longer a scientific truth, and atheism was built on the classical view of science, of a deterministic universe, something that's finite, something that can be proven based on laws, and that's it. There is no more argument on it because this is what the law is, and that's what the law is. There's no more argument beyond the law. If you're in a probabilistic universe, well, there is an argument after that. Because there's no proof. And I think this is what causes the problem. This is what adds the length into things. And this is why you have to do this nitty-gritty research. You have to go and do this nitty-gritty research because this is what gives you the findings of, okay, what's happened. And you say, okay, we now see that quantum physics has done this along with superstring theory. Quantum physics started it. It continued on, still within superstring theory. That means this is something that's part of reality. You go back into history and see, well, was this uncertainty always there? And this is what we're going to do now. We're going to go back into history. We're going to look at the history of atheism in comparison to the atomic bomb, and we'll see that the uncertainty is there. You see the theories will change continuously, that you'll have one theory produced by one person, and that as the the understanding moves forward. There's a change, a continuous change in theory, scientist after scientist, generation after generation, and that what we're seeing in quantum mechanics and again in superstring theory, this is going to be the new standard. This is going to be the new norm in science, and the basic issue thing is if you don't like this uncertainty, well, then unfortunately science and research is not for you, and you need to choose something else. And this is where we are. What we're doing here is we're looking at this from a scientific point of view. So we're going to take this this direction, and the overall arching title is called Atheism and the Atomic Bomb, and it's going to form a 12. And I'm not kidding about this. It's going to form a 12-week lecture schedule beginning on August 11th. We'll be doing a 12-week lecture schedule on this, and we're going to be talking about all this stuff. We're going to go into more of the detail. And I said, this is not something that's easy. It's a very complex thing. And what we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at the rise of the atheistic society from 1900 to just about 2010. We're going to take a look at how things have evolved, where they came from, and we're looking at all the different issues. But in parallel, we're going to look at the development of the atomic bomb, because it's the atomic bomb that caused the problem. If the atomic bomb was never developed, there wouldn't be an issue, because things would simply be theoretical. But because the atomic bomb was developed, and we did see the atomic bomb to be developed, because we saw the explosion and everything, this changes the whole narrative. It changes how we view things. And so the atomic bomb is a necessary parallel. So we're looking at the development of the atomic bomb, and we're looking at atheism in parallel. We're looking at this sort of evolution here. In other words, we're going from nuclear physics, from atomic physics, into particle physics. That's basically quantum theory, quantum electrodynamics, quantum field theory, superstring theory, the different variations of superstring theory, black holes, dark matter, and out into the unknown, because again, there's no end to this. So where we're going, this is going to end up being a very lengthy research project. It's going to be a lengthy thing. It's going to end up taking an entire year to get through. So the 12 weeks are what we call the initial introduction. Then to go into specifics and details, you do need to go. We need to do something on psychology. We need to do something on psychiatry. We have to go into eugenics and genetics. This includes the work that was done by Watson and Crick. This also includes Tesla and the War Machine, how Tesla's stuff was rejected by mainstream society, but the military was watching on and picked up and brought all the work that was done by Tesla into the military-industrial complex, and how the military-industrial complex in the 1930s from the atheistic side formed based on and using the construct set up by Edward Bernays to form these secret societies by hiding them, not by really hiding them, but by hiding them in plain sight, creating a false or a popular narrative, a popular view to society. And this is what one of the things we're taking a look at once we get into the sort of post-World War II. We'll see the emergence of this. We'll talk about the difference between the beatniks and the beatnik society, who were the nihilists, and the pragmatics, who were essentially you call your sock hop society. That was your mainstream society, the mainstream view of things. What was presented on TV, TV was sort of just coming up at the time. Then you move into the 60s, where you have the hippies and the space age, right? And in other words, we're going to take this sort of comparative look over the next 12 weeks. But again, once we're beyond the 12 weeks, we have to start going into some of the specifics. So 12 weeks is simply the introduction. We're not getting into the meat of things. We're getting simply into the introduction of things. And it's going to be at least a year before we really get into quantum mechanics, because we have to get this sort of general understanding done. And once we have the general understanding done, we need to start moving into the specifics of the physics of it. We get into the physics of things, and the evolution of physics. And unfortunately, the evolution of physics is done deep inside of calculus. And so that's right. Next year, probably around this time, probably around well, August 11th. Next year, August 11th, as we begin the sort of the second season, what you'll see is you'll start seeing a fair chunk of calculus in here, and you're going to see this has become particularly when we're talking about the physics, it's going to become mathematics heavy, and this is where a lot of people will start having convulsions, eye convulsions. Their eyes will start rolling back in their head. They'll start twitching and go into full-on comas. This is known as the mathematics or the calculus coma. I've seen it before, right? Someone asks, "What do you do for a job?" You know, and you sit down, you start explaining, you get into some more advanced areas of calculus. As soon as you start hitting that calculus, that calculus area, or even get into some of the particle physics, it's like the eyes roll back, and it's like. You know, the snoring begins, and they just kind of, you know, you can imagine if there's a cartoon that someone would immediately pull out an IV and a heart monitor and hook them up to it, and they'd be wheeled out on a stretcher to an ambulance and taken to an awaiting hospital room, where there'll be mourners at the side hoping that he wakes up. Quick, get some fun into him. Put some party music on. He's had too much calculus. He's in a coma. But this is where things go. This is sort of the physics of things, and this is not it's not something that can be done overnight. I don't know. I don't know if Jeremy H is going to stick around. From what I read, I don't think he's going to stick around. If he wants to get to the good part, the fast forward to the good part, if he's the person who fast forwards tapes, he's not a type of person who's going to be sitting in a lecture for 12 weeks just to get through the introduction. I don't think he's going to be sitting through the calculus that comes next year. You know, August 2015, the heavy calculus starts. I don't think that's going to happen either. But you never know. You never know how things are going to turn out, because I can tell you one thing. I'm still going to be around. I mean, I was around when Jessica Alquist sort of popped up, and that's when people wonder why Jessica Alquist is in my my taglines and, you know, sort of my search words. And it's because I was doing this. I was working on this sort of the quantum physics issues. I've been working on these things for a long time, and Jessica Alquist popped up and became a hot topic, and I put my 2 cents into it, and not even 6 months down the road, she disappeared. The whole topic disappeared, and the sort of comment was a year later, you look at the topic on Jessica Alquist, and in terms of some of these discussion boards that was going on, and it said, the comment is, you type in the search word Jessica Alquist, and all you get is 6 pages of this guy, referring to me. So, you know, there is a statement to be made or to be said for longevity. If you can stick around, outlast your opposition, then that says something on its own. So I don't think Jeremy's going to be around that much. I think maybe if he's still around, maybe sort of in the shower, or he's fast forwarding, looking for the good parts, you know, skipping through things. But I don't think he's going to stick around for the 12 weeks. I don't think he's going to stick around for the calculus. We'll see though. Well, you know, you never know. You know, we'll see who sticks. And the thing is, I don't think a lot of people are going to stick around for the calculus. I think there'll be a lot of sort of interest here and there. There'll different things will sort of intrigue different people. But overall, I think most of the topic is not going to be for the average person. I'm not excluding the average person from this. And I do have 15-year-old watching this, and people as young as 15. And I'm not discouraging this young. You know, if you're young, if you're in junior high, don't worry about not understanding things. Don't be ashamed to ask questions. Part of not understanding things is that's how you start. Well, even that's how you start. And I'm not being sarcastic from to them. I'm being sarcastic about what I just said. When I'm at 25 years of research. What I'm talking about says that it doesn't matter how much you've done research, how much research you've done, you're still at the beginning. There's still so much unknown that you never progress from beyond that understanding of let's say, a tween. And this is why I call myself an infinite tween. I'm an infinite tween because my position in society, my definition in society, doesn't change. It stays the same as it does between, for a tween. If you're between the ages of 8 and 13, that's where my definition is. There's no definition to my life. I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea exactly where the end is. I don't even know. I have no idea where the end is. More often than not, when I'm starting something new, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's like getting up and playing a video game. You get up, you start button mashing, and you fiddle around. You can sort of see this. Look at the beginnings of TalkLive, and then go back and look at the beginning of Cyborg Alpha, Cyborg Alpha TV. Look at the beginning of Cyborg Alpha TV. Look at my first broadcast. You'll see that the whole thing, when I start things, is nothing more than button mashing. And it's only as time passes, as I gain more experience, that things get not really better, but somewhat better. So, anyways, we are at the end. We're at the end of our discussion. We're at the end of the live essay. We're going to do tomorrow. We're going to do tomorrow as well. We'll sort of do a time killer because we're off on Wednesday, and the official schedule doesn't start until August 11th. That's when our official schedule starts. So we'll go from there. We'll just sort of enjoy ourselves. So, anyways, that's about it for now. My name is Dr. Daniel Karras. You're watching TalkLive on Cyborg Alpha TV. This is now going to be the series of essays connected to InstaVlogs. InstaVlogs are the research notes, and these are the essays based on the research notes. Good night. See you on YouNow, because that's where I'm heading over now. I'm heading over to YouNow, and see you there if you go there.